which means you're either tearing down all the walls or you're slapping another sheet of, 3/8 sheetrock over the top of what you have, which means you've got other issues, right? You're bringing the electrical forward, you're taping, texturing, mudding, painting, etc. The next thing is office buildings probably have elevators. Okay, has anybody in here ever bought a property with an elevator? Okay, so you know what a unique pain in the ass they are.
It's up and going again. You can look it up.
Yeah,
The slide shows up.
Get that pulled up, guys. So an elevator, I'm just going to tell you, if you buy a property with an elevator and it's on anything but an elevator management plan and it's already been inspected and passed, it doesn't matter how tight a ship you think you run, you're not going anywhere for 6 months. Like that's your starting zone. If it takes 12 months, it takes 12 months. You can't get the parts for them. The amount of people who are licensed to work on them is like 3 companies, and they charge you what you want and they schedule you when they want. So keep that in mind. That's a big part. And then finally, it's the fire suppression, which does also apply to hotel conversions, and we're going to talk a lot about that today. So that brings me to my point today. People don't have the money for the conversions. The loans kind of suck. And a lot of these people that didn't end up selling in 2020, they took out that market money, which was 3 to 5 years, which if we do the math is about now. Okay? So this represents the opportunity for people that have cash or have private money sources or have the ability to raise money or have friends that want to give them money. A lot of people all have buildings for sale, and a lot of people are reaching out to the same people who have buildings for sale and finding there's no deals there, right? Like, who can afford to buy $80,000 a unit right now with interest rates in the 7s? Nope, nobody. So for people who are creative and can get into a different space, that represents the opportunity. So seller financing, this is the reason we're talking about it. You guys should be able to see my settlement statement on this sheet. This is my real settlement statement that I paid for this property in 2021, almost 2022. It's right there at the end of 2021. You'll see I bought this property, 31 units for $1.2 million, okay? So that's roughly, what is that, $40,000 a unit, like $38,000 a unit. I put $300,000 down on it, so 25%. That's basically this. That's less actually than I think you put down in a bank. More than you would put down if you went in SBA. But SBA, I don't know if SBA would let you do a conversion. They might have some questions about that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I bought this property on a 30-year AM at a 4.5% interest rate for 10 years. It's 10-year money, no adjustment. Okay. That's a great deal. That, like, if we were buying an apartment complex on seller financing and we got those terms, we would think it was a slam dunk, right? That is really pretty common on hotels and offices, that they're willing to wrap it. Because one of two things happens on these. Either one, their note is years old, because like we said, it's incredibly punitive for these properties to refinance, okay? So a lot of them, they end up sitting on the money for a long time, which means they have a big equity gap, okay, between what they owe and what it's worth. Even in their diminished state, there's still an equity gap. And the reason that I like equity gaps, if you're not afraid of a note getting called due, which I'm not, I don't think they're in a position to call notes due, especially not in the office space, is that if their underlying note is at 7% and I want to get it at 4%, normally that's a problem, right? But it's not a problem if the pay down can't possibly lapse itself in 10 years, right? If by the time I need to return all the money back to them, I still am only going to pay off $200,000 in principal over 10 years and they have a $600,000 spread, it's not my problem. Does that make sense? And even if I'm paying less interest than they are to the bank, their money is in their equity. And so my payment is probably ultimately still higher than their payment to the bank. It's just the amortization that's different. So a lot of these people are going to be open to seller financing because their experience, their psyche from either getting bailed out in 2008 or watching this big boom, their psyche is that they understand that financing is a pain. If you come to pitch somebody this in the multifamily space, they're like, yeah, why am I going to do this when there's 4 other people that can go get a loan, right? Like, money is easy in apartments, generally easy, harder than single family, but easy. So people don't really want to carry as you know. So you're going to be better at getting seller financing. I wanted to keep that in mind. Let me see. When you buy a hotel or an apartment complex, at least my history is that those trade at a cap rate of somewhere between 10 and 15%. Okay? When you value those businesses, you're kind of valuing them differently. You're not typically going off a cap rate like we are in real estate. You're going after some sort of variation. Everybody does it differently, but you're going off a multiple of their net operating income, okay, right? Because this is an active business. Somebody's running an apartment complex, they set it and forget it, they put it in property management. You get long-term debt, that's why the cap rates are compressed. You buy a hotel, you need staff to turn over the rooms every single night. You need booking softwares that integrate, you need customer service. Insurance is a massive pain. Insurance on an office complex or a hotel is going to be harder than anything you guys have shopped for. It's not just a price issue, it's a getting a yes issue. Like today, you can hardly insure a hotel. Like they just won't write the policies. So that's a big thing to be aware of. But ultimately, it's a big business. And so if you're trying to convince somebody that they should come buy this asset from you, they're going to have to actually work in as a job, or even if they hire people, they're going to have a management burden. They need to make more money. Which means if it's making net $100,000, an apartment complex, $100,000 a year would get them, $2 or $3 million. As a hotel, $100,000 a year would be lucky to get them, $900,000 to 1.2. Does that make sense? Okay. So the proposition, the value add for you is obviously not to continue to run it as an office complex or a hotel. It's to make the conversion. You're not going to make your money on cash flow long term on these projects. You're going to make your money on the pump and dump. You guys kind of tracking with me? The reason I'm telling you this is I'm trying to prime your mind for why when I negotiate seller financing on these sorts of properties, I'm not as conventionally worried about some of the same things like interest rates, debt pay down, as I am when I'm evaluating on things that I'm going to buy and hold long term, okay? So I understand that my money is going to be made differently. This is kind of paper money, okay? There is some appreciation that we force by physically changing the property and adding services and amenities, but the bulk of your money is made in the change of use, okay? The play is the cap rate compression, okay? The fact that you open it up to different sources of financing, that's where you make your money. So let's see, yep, 1.2 million, I put $300,000 down on it. Now you're looking at my rent roll. This is when is this pulled? October 31st of 2024. Looks like I'm 93.5% occupied. That means what? I've got 2 units vacant, okay? My bottom of the line number there is $19,650 a month. So I borrowed money, seller financing on this property, 1.2 million, I put 25% down, 4.5% interest, 30-year AM. So my payment, my PITI on this property is like $6,200 a month and change, okay? My principal, interest, and taxes are $5,160 something, and my insurance is like $1,000 a month, $1,100 a month. It's insured as an apartment complex, okay? It's not insured as a hotel. So it's pulling in, basically, it's just called $20,000 for easy math. It's making $6,200. You convert these units, you're paying for all the utilities, okay? So it's a little bit deceptive. My utility costs are probably $2,500 a month to $3,000 a month, every single month. That's water, that's gas, that's electrical. We're probably spending another $3,000 a month on repairs. Hotels, you're always going to have a little bit more in ongoing maintenance than you would in a standard apartment complex because it's not really built for strenuous use. Like the plumbing's not really built for it, the electrical's not really built for it. But that being said, even after going, fully away from keyboard and giving it to a management company, I'm probably true netting over $6,000 a month on this property, which is pretty good. That's a nice check to get every month. Now the flip side of this is I want you to understand the cap rate compression. If I bought this at 1.2 with 31 units, and it's now grossing you know, because they're gonna add the vacancy back in and then pull it out as an expense ratio. But let's just say it's pulling in $21,000 a month. What's it worth as an apartment complex? Anybody? If it's netting, you know, $6,000 a month, and by the time somebody else runs their numbers, I'm going to convince them it's $100,000. It's probably worth $2.2 million. Okay? So the question is between the 1.2 basis that I bought it for and the 2.2 that it's worth today, how much money did it take me to get there? Okay? That's going to be the devil in the details that you have to understand in order to make a lot of money doing conversions of any sort. Okay? I do want to point out the cash flow. I want to tell you something about this. Obviously, yes, we're making money holding the property, okay? I'm going to reiterate again that the money is going to be made when you either refinance or sell, because this is a management headache. Every time I see this rent roll, even though it pays me a lot, I've managed these myself before I outsourced it to a third-party company, and I can tell you this is a management headache. You are not going to put somebody in a 250 square foot apartment and not have immense turnover. Okay? And you're also not going to get extremely quality tenants. So the people that stay at your hotel conversions like this, they're going to pay a lot, they're going to move in quickly, you're never going to have an issue filling them, but you will be a constant rotating door. Like, your management staff will work. You'll kind of fend with domestic violence issues. Surprisingly, we haven't had a lot of drug issues. I thought that would be a big one, but we're really not having drug issues. But a lot of domestic violence. A woman will move out of her home and go to the only place that she can afford to rent on one income. And it'll be good, and 2 months later she'll make up with baby daddy, and it will go bad, and then baby daddy's on my property, and you know, I'm pointing a gun in his face. So just keep that in mind. You can make money. Depending on what your risk tolerance is, you probably do want to hire this one out. This isn't going to be as easy a plug and play in your infrastructure if you're like me and have your management in-house. This is going to take somebody, a dedicated leasing agent. They are going to be leasing all year round, 24/7. Faye, could you take us to the next slide, please? Okay, so we're going to be talking about the biggest thing that kills these deals. If you haven't done any sort of commercial conversion, this is going to kick your butt unless you learn from me, okay? The slide is titled Fire Suppression is Complicated. You're going to see an overhead map, okay? This overhead map on this slide represents the public infrastructure that is in the streets around my building, okay? This becomes immediately important. This is part of your due diligence when you're looking at a project like this. There's a couple reasons this matters. First, in order to bring fire suppression into your building, you need a lot of what? Water, okay? And you need so much water, in fact, that the amount of water available matters. So it doesn't just matter that there's water in the street. How big is the line? What's the pressure? Now, this hotel is a single level hotel, all right? Fire suppression doubles in cost, is a good rule of thumb, doubles in cost every story. So your second story is going to be twice as much as the first. Your third story is going to be 4 times as much as the first. Your fourth story is going to be 8 times as much as the first. You understand? So you got to know this. Go ahead.
Why?
Good question. So here's why. 1, you have the pressure issue. 2, you have a storage issue. So if all those lines pop at once, they're all flowing through, it's got to contain a fire. Well, at a certain point when everything's on fire and everything's dumping, it's like, what happens if you're having a shower at your house and it's fine? Then your kids get in the second bathroom, and it's okay, it's livable. But by the time somebody runs the dishwasher in the kitchen, the hot water's gone and so is the pressure, right? So when you start popping up, they also make you start storing water, okay? And you go up high enough, and sometimes they start changing the systems you're required to have. Sometimes it's not a water system anymore. Sometimes it's a dry system. They cost more money. You've also got, freezing issues. You got to put the risers. It changes the amount of risers that you need to have. Maybe you need more than one tap out of the city, which means you're opening more than one road. It just gets expensive because it takes money to move the water.
Makes sense.
Not to mention just the ongoing requirement of monitoring, inspections every year, every 2 years, I think, in Oklahoma City. No, every year. Every year, that's right, they inspect 1 year. So it gets more expensive every time, okay? And if you need more water than is in the city street, the city will not shake your hand and say, thank you for being a taxpayer. Let us take care of that for you. They will tell you that you are responsible for upgrading the main and doing the tap. Okay, the next reason this matters is if you look at the road in front of my complex, what does that say?
Main Street.
Main Street. That is a euphemism for pain in the ass, okay, to tap into. Obviously, if you tap into a road and you do a hot tap, you're shutting down the road, okay? It means you're paying for traffic control studies, you're redirecting traffic, you gotta pull permits, oftentimes on bigger streets, well out in advance. So on this one, we actually took water from the north side of it, where you see that 6-inch DIP water main. The other reason that you want to check this in due diligence is I've had it gone and I found out that sewer hookups and water actually was nowhere near my property. Like, we always think if there's a road, there's utilities in it. Not so. In fact, the development project that I'm working on today was a pain in the butt because I had to bring sewer hookup. The nearest sewer hookup was 2 roads away. So I had to bring it through other people's properties. I had to do all sorts of stuff. It was a big pain in the butt. But anyways, you got to know which road I'm going to open, when am I going to open the road, how much water is there, okay? And the next thing to just consider when you're thinking about this is the asphalt plant, okay? Cities don't let you just patch the road when you want to and with whatever you want to, okay? You're going to use an asphalt plant and they're not open year-round, okay? Asphalt plants are open for a period of the year. Normally, they're just closed for the winter, but it's good to know. It's good to check because I ran into that issue. I kind of shot myself in the foot. I pissed the city off a little bit because we were doing it right on the week that the asphalt plant closed, and our contractors did, regular contractor fuckery, and we missed the asphalt plant by a day. So we had to do a temporary patch on the road. They were not happy with me. When you're looking at this, you have to think strategically about, okay, now I know where I get the water. I know how I'm going to do the traffic control study. I know it's got enough volume. I know where I'm tying in. I know how I'm going to open up and close the road. How am I going to mitigate the expensive cost of bringing the line to the building so that I can properly distribute it, okay? So what we did here is we took it from this north street, right at that corner of the back corner of our building, and I brought a line all the way down the back of the building. And from that line, I just put a new riser at each building and brought it this way. As opposed to Main Street, where if I would have done it on Main Street, I would have had to either open a ton of the road, or I'd have opened one part of the road and then bring the line all the way this way and shoot it off. Doing that change probably saved me about $25,000 when I was looking at the bids. Okay, $25,000 just by kind of cleverly deciding where we were going to put the line. So that worth our time, right? Now, I want to caution you guys. One thing that kicked my butt on this property is I went to a fire suppression company and I got a bid to do fire suppression. Okay, and you're going to see that bid next, but that bid was like $50-something thousand. I said, ouch, not really knowing what things cost, but I ultimately paid them. A fire suppression company does not give you a bid to do the entire fire suppression project. They give you a bid to do one specific thing. Source the pipe that actually goes in the units, okay, and then hang them up. And they do some fancy calculations that I'm sure just a computer does for them. You need 5 contractors to do a fire suppression gig, okay? You need an excavation contractor to open the road and then put it back. You need a plumbing contractor to do a hot tap onto the line because they will not let you turn off the water when you tap into the city road, especially if you're in a high-profile area like this with a lot of usage. They're not going to kill water to 6 blocks for your project, so you're going to have to do a hot tap and then run the line where it needs to be. You're going to have your fire suppression contractor. By the way, they won't hook it up to the plumber's line. They just put it into the building. So you're going to have your fire suppression contractor run all of it, okay? When they're running all of it, they're going to do you the great favor of tearing all of your crap apart, okay? They're not going to put it back. They're not going to do it. You're going to need another plumber to hook it up from the line that you ran in the ground to their pipes that they put, their riser. And a lot of times, this is interesting to know, it's not this way in Oklahoma City, at least not to my knowledge, but it is in a lot of states. They have different levels of plumbing licenses. So the plumber that might be qualified to do your hot tap and run your line might not have the appropriate license, as was in my case, to actually hook it up to the building. Okay, so just food for thought. Once you've got your lines ran and you've got your general contractor come in, that's contractor number 4, to come in and patch the holes where they ran it through your lines, put everything back. You need an electrician to run wires into your smoke detectors and your monitoring systems. So you have to pay somebody, once fire suppression's in, you have to pay people to monitor it, okay? So that if the sprinklers go off, the fire department automatically gets a notification that they need to respond, right? Normally that's gonna cost you $100 a month, but it's also gonna cost you $10,000 from your electrician. And obviously, all of this needs to be inspected, which any of you who've ever worked with a city or a municipality understand that that comes with a little bit of a cost on its own. So do you guys understand that you're going to need like 5 separate bids here? Okay, good. Could you take me to the next slide, please?
I have a question real quick.
Yeah, hit me.
Kinda- So was this an existing fire suppression that just had to have maintenance done, or was this like a new development, start from scratch?
Yeah, start from scratch.
Okay.
And a lot of them
Where
are
the hell
going
that
to be.
ran?
Thank God.
It's a big bonus to me now that I've been through this twice. It's a big bonus to me when I walk through offices or I walk through hotels that already have a fire suppression system. Because at least, you know, you're just going through, you're updating the riser, you're updating some stuff. You might have to change the head locations based on your layout or increased intensity of use. But you're going to save a lot of money already having it there.
Okay.
So yes, so you guys should be looking at a quote from my excavation contractor. This is the cheapest one that I eventually hired. I reached out to like 40 excavation contractors. I think I got 6 bids. This was the lowest one. They ranged from $37,000 to $58,000. And by the time this guy was done, he actually charged me $43,000 because there were rocks in the ground. I guess rocks aren't supposed to be in the ground. I mean, I don't know. That's where rocks go. But so if you kind of look at this itemized breakdown, right? You're going to see they charge me to get up in the morning. I'm pretty sure that's what a mobilization charge is. That's $1,000. I mean, seriously, I think that's like the wake up on a Monday charge. They're going to have to cut the curb and the gutter to bring it in, and they're going to have to put it back to city standard. Sometimes you have to go through sidewalk, and if they go through sidewalk, they make you replace the whole square. Obviously, you'll see my asphalt patch there where they cut into a 300 square foot area of, man, they did not cut into 300 square feet. They scammed me. 300 square feet of asphalt. They did their hot tap there. They subcontracted a plumber for that. Excavate the water line, backfill, and do water testing, which is a fancy way to see if the water comes out the other side. I didn't see anybody with the test strip doing anything, nor did I receive any test results. But yeah, anyways, so this is my excavation contracting. So every number that you see on here today in 2021, I think it's safe to tell you guys to throw 35% on for today's number as a starting mark. You know, probably 35 to 50% more expensive. Yes, sir.
So, Antonio, my friend here was just asking, because I share his question. If we're already in a living space, a hotel, are they not required to have a lot of these things by their nature, just the suppression and all that?
Yeah, and we're going to go into bullying the city in just a second, but the answer is a lot of these are grandfathered. They predate these requirements, right? So this building, I think this building is 1960. So it was built before this was a requirement in the code.
And so they get a waiver because of the...
Correct.
Yeah.
Until you change the use of the building.
Right.
If you change the use of the building, or if you do certain meaningful remodels, every building code is different. I've made this mistake myself by assuming that the way I did it in Idaho is the way Oklahoma City does it, is the way that South Dakota does it. It's not true. They're all completely different. And they might subscribe to different years of the building code. which also vary, right? Like 2015 building code is different than 2018 is versus different than 21.
And each state has its own building code?
They subscribe to a different building code. So the building code is set out by the ICC, the International Code Council, and the cities will take a vote and say, out of all these versions, which one do we want to hold ourselves accountable to? And so different, this is just a side note that's interesting, is different states subscribe to different books altogether, right? Like South Dakota has an international property maintenance code. Which, Troy, do we have a property maintenance code here in?
No.
Yeah, we don't, right?
Where, no.
Yeah. So like, we don't even have that. But in South Dakota, if they want to, I don't know that they do, but if you ever looked at an inspector sideways, he can start going down a list on how you're supposed to maintain your structure, right? So it's kind of interesting. I have a subscription to the ICC. It costs $100 a month. In my line of work, I found it's well worth it because I can go into the corner and I can type in a keyword. I can select, my city does 2021, and I can type in water faucet. And instead of having to read through 600 pages or whatever, it'll take me to the 6 codes that talk about that. So that's really helpful. You can do that right online. So today, if you were to do this, what we did here, I would expect probably $50,000. So that's your first expense. Now remember, this is single level, 31 units. Okay? You double if you go up. So keep that in mind. The next thing that I want to tell you too, though, is remember, you can generally, if you're big enough in a range, get a kind of cost per unit number. But remember that there are fixed costs, okay? So you're not going to save a ton because you have 5 units versus 30, right? You still have to tap the road. You still have to cut through the ground. You still have to pay these guys $1,000 to wake up in the morning. You have to do all this crap. And you have to pay for the riser, and you got to get people out there. So you're going to have some minimal fixed rate costs. But after you get past those flat rate costs, that's when you start maybe driving down some of the costs by having more units, right? Because they're already out there, they're already working.